Everyone in SEO is racing to sound more human, more authentic, more original, less like a machine. And yet the SEOs who are actually winning right now are the ones who understand exactly how the machine thinks. Not to imitate the machine, but to be smarter. There is a difference between ignoring the algorithm and understand it well enough to make better decisions than it does. That tension between human judgment and algorithmic logic is exactly what my next guest has spent 22 years navigating. I'm joined today by Mark Williams-Cook. Welcome to the road to SERP Conf Sofia 2026. Mark Williams-Cook has been doing SEO for 22 years. He's director at Candour, an SEO and web development agency based in Norwich, UK. He's the founder of AlsoAsked, the people also ask research tool that sits on the desk of some of the best SEOs on the planet. He writes the Core Updates newsletter, weekly SEO news and commentary for over 12,000 subscribers, and he is the author of over 1,500 unsolicited SEO tips published on LinkedIn over the last 6 years, which, judging by his 80,000 followers, turned out to be very much solicited. And he is also the most prolific MS Paint artist in the SEO industry, because sometimes the best way to explain a complex technical concept is just a stick figure. Welcome, Mark. For the record, these questions are your answers will be very much solicited.
Thank you, David. What a lovely intro. I enjoy that I'm the most prolific MS Paint drawer. I think there's only two of us in the SEO industry. So,
who is the other one?
You embarrassed me now because I've forgotten his name. He worked at Lumar, and I just stumbled across. I thought he was doing it like to sort of take the mickey out of me, but he just does that as well.
Oh, okay. You can send me a picture of him, just drawing with paint, of course. We can send it to him. So about the paint philosophy, I think you're one of the most technical SEO industry. I know you know your work, and your signature communication tool is the paint, stick figures, and so on. So in an era where everyone is racing toward polished AI visuals and so on, it's like a deliberate choice or a stance, or what it is.
There's a couple of things. One, I think marketing is about trying to stand out and do things differently, because I used AI images like really early on when they kind of first started being a thing, and I thought they were really interesting and amazing. But then obviously it's kind of all I see now on my LinkedIn feed. It's infographics made by AI, and I've developed, and I think a lot of people have, like a very quick unconscious test. A lot when you're looking at something that's done by AI. Some of it's really great, but a lot of images you can tell. And for me, I feel slightly disappointed sometimes when I see them, because I know how low effort they are. So I just thought I'd do something a little bit higher effort. I mean, I only spend like 5 minutes doing them, but the point is that they stand out because it doesn't look like anything else in people's feeds. And I got really cool feedback about it. I did one basically as a joke, and then I had like loads of comments being like, oh, this is so cool, like you put a lot of effort into this. So I was like, well, I'll just keep going then.
So, you should draw the picture with 6 fingers with 6 sticks.
Yeah. Yeah, I was accused of using AI to do those pictures, so I even did a little time lapse one time of painting them. But no, as well, that was kind of my childhood as well, because I grew up in an era of the first kind of desktop programs. Yeah, so I feel I've got a skill there that maybe like Gen Z and stuff and Gen Alpha doesn't have.
Yeah, it shows. Yeah, I can see that skill. Yeah. So you publish over 1,500 unsolicited SEO tips on LinkedIn, which have now evolved into the core updates newsletter with so many subscribers. I read it every morning, and that's 6 years of showing up consistently, giving away knowledge for free. What kept you going, and what have those tips changed as the industry shifted under your feet?
So I, I originally started posting those things as basically therapy for myself because I saw what I thought was lots of bad advice at the time on LinkedIn for SEO, because LinkedIn, I think 5 or 6 years ago, didn't have as much of the kind of regular SEO community on it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that community, I think, was on like Twitter and forums and different places. So I started just posting on LinkedIn with the logic that I'm never going to help anyone just by like arguing with people saying like, oh, I don't agree with this, this is wrong. So I was like, I'm just going to put my own stuff out there that I think is helpful. And yeah, I was kind of doing it for me, because also sometimes you can know something, but having to explain it and encapsulate it in a generic way helps you understand it even better. Because the thing that's tricky about doing those tips is I try and make everyone kind of universally applicable, and I try and present it in a way where I'm not leaving myself open for like edge cases. So it tries to be very generic, good advice. So in terms of has the industry moved under my feet, I think looking back, most of those tips are still valid in terms of the things they're telling people to do. There's some stuff, obviously, like, there's, for instance, Shopify specific things in there, and that platform changed over the years because you couldn't initially like edit robots.txt on Shopify and things like that, and you can now, which is great. So nothing that I think now, oh no, that was really bad advice, I shouldn't have done that. But again, I kept going just because eventually I started getting really good feedback about it. I've tried lots of things, and I think this is the thing, right? People pay attention to the things that were successful and not the things that weren't, because I'm always trying new things, and sometimes they get no interest, and I just quietly stop doing them and try something else.
That's good. And you said that you didn't want to like point it out to people what they were saying wrong and so on, but you do that sometimes, and it's something that I really appreciate it, because there is so much bad advice out there that it's good to have someone to say, hey, this is not right, this is, and you like explain it well, like with your arguments or studies and so on. So I think it's something that you do it, and I really appreciate it too.
Thank you. I think I do it less than I used to, and I have kind of some rules in that I'm never attacking the person. It's always questioning the idea, and I always welcome that to like me as well. If you think I'm wrong about something, like I want to hear it. And I just ask people normally to give me either their logic or what their evidence is for that, because sometimes I'll tackle things I see when I think it's almost like purposefully misleading, where someone's trying to sell something. There's lots of it, like, oh, AI can do what your agency can do and charges you $15,000 for an audit. It's like, it absolutely can't. And I've offered to these people, I've been like, okay, do your 10-minute audit, and then I'll do an audit, and then we'll compare them, and you can decide if they are similar or not, as like because I'd be quite happy to do that as a one-off example, but nobody yet has decided that's the thing they want to do, surprisingly.
Actually, I must say that you are really lucky, because you don't speak or understand Spanish. So it's a good thing now, because there is so much bad advice out there too in Spanish. I can see the English and the Spanish ones, and it's too much. So thank you for your hard work with the good tips. And your talking, Sofia, is called Do Not Think Like a Robot. For the non-developers watching, and for me too, that exclamation point mark means not. So the real title is actually Do Not Think Like a Robot. What do you mean by that? Like read like a robot, think like a human, or it's confusing altogether?
So part of the theme of the talk is about decision making in SEO, right? And I see
You mean asking ChatGPT, right?
yeah, exactly. I see too many people, and I'm not even necessarily talking about Gen AI here. I'm seeing too many people think about what robots are doing and how robots perceive things when all that's happening is these tools are being built, these bots are being built, these systems are being built to try and understand and perceive things as humans do. So I think it's sometimes worth kind of reflecting on that, hey, you're a human and you intrinsically understand the complexities and nuances of being a human. Robots that are trying to judge content, judge websites, etc., are very dumbed down versions of that, but that is what they're aiming for. And I see lots of people make SEO decisions where they are trying to cater too much for how robots perceive things and not things that would delight users, because that's the thing that everything's going to be moving towards in general. So the title is kind of a trick in that you can read it both ways, and it's kind of explaining how SEO, it's easy to fall into that trap of, oh, I need to do this because the robots are going to do this or think this, but that's generally very short-term thinking and it will work until it doesn't. So that's one of the main themes of the talk.
I can understand like some people likes like discovering new tricks. Maybe that they don't work, like the markdown version of HTML pages and so on. But what do you think about companies and big tools like Cloudflare that offer that as a function, new function, like to do that for all the website? Like, is it really useful for the sector?
So I think it was Profound recently did a study on LLM visibility, and they did a split test between making all the pages markdown and just having regular pages, and they found absolutely zero difference in LLM visibility. It's not a documented thing saying that they want that. John O. Alderson has done some brilliant posts pointing out that HTML is contains more information than just kind of the word content. It is structure in itself, which is useful for LLMs. That said, I understand why various platforms offer things that users say they want, because that's, at the end of the day, they're trying to make money. They have shareholders. Yeah. People say, we want this thing. And it's like, well, just give them the thing then. It's not different. There's lots of platforms now that will like generate LLMs.txt, even though there's absolutely zero evidence that any of the major LLMs are using that. All the tests I've seen seem to be kind of null. There's no, results showing that they use that, but people want it, so it appears in these platforms. Again, part of the talk I'm doing is about EV, which is expected value, which is a kind of a sum you can do, especially when you're playing poker, which is essentially the expected value you think you're going to get from doing a thing and the cost. So the expected value of LLMs.txt, for instance, or Markdown can be attractive, because if it's just automatically generated, there's very little downside to doing it. So I'm not saying don't do it. What I'm generally picking up on is when there is, say, a geo practitioner saying this is what geo is and this is what you need to do and this helps, because you don't need to do it. There's zero evidence that it helps. So I feel it's a little bit dishonest kind of presenting it as that and charging for it.
And I think one thing is maybe do that like it costs like zero effort and it has zero risk or damage. But maybe you see some advice out there that say, okay, you can do like 1,000 programmatic pages with this trick and this prompt, and that can actually hurt our clients or their clients. I don't know if you will talk about that too.
Yeah, so one of the, I guess, the complexities and nuance about what I want to talk about is deciding, I call it like what game you're playing, because my advice always comes from an agency perspective, in that my goal and how I calculate expected value is over the very long term, like multiple years. Whereas I've been a very successful affiliate before, and basically I just wanted to sell as much stuff as quickly as possible, and I don't care if the domain burnt to the ground after 6 weeks. If I'd been making, you know, $1,000 a day, that's fine with me. So it's not about, you know, black hat and white hat. It's about understanding risk and what your time scale is, because I don't think any of these things, unless they're literally illegal, I don't think any of these things are inherently wrong, because you can't hold Google up as some kind of you know, any kind of bar for morality, because they do some absolutely disgusting things as well. So you can't be like,
Don't
oh,
be
we have to
evil.
be good to
Yeah, yeah.
Google. So yeah, if people need to do stuff that, you know, Google doesn't like because they're making a livelihood, I've got no problem with that whatsoever.
And you're talking about long term. Do you think that that concept in SEO, as things are right now in the world, in AI and so on, has changed? Like the long term SEO is different that 10 years ago, like in time meaning, you know?
I wouldn't say so. I think the to speak more generally, SEO has become more multi-channel and more strategic than it used to be. It used to be more some very specific levers you could pull around links and title tags and things like that. And I think now in AI world of visibility, it's very much, you need to be speaking to the social media team. You have to be doing digital PR. So if anything, I would say long term has got longer, if that makes sense. So I think it's more profitable now to focus on the long term than it was previously, because I think it's, unless you are extreme, it's hard. I'd say it's harder to bend the rules. I was going to say it's harder to cheat.
I see.
It's not harder to cheat at the moment. There's so many ridiculous holes in Google, and I'll give some examples of them in the talk as well. But you know, it's very possible to rank very competitively within weeks with some methods, but they do get shut down within, you know, again within weeks. Whereas I think previously it was easier to like bend the rules. I think the kind of term was grey hat, which when I thought about it more, I think is just basically black hat that's hard to catch. So I think there's less effective grey hat now. So if you are a proper brand, proper organization, it's a better return on investment to think longer term than it ever has been.
I see. And you recently wrote a post about doing the analysis yourself. That is a learning exercise, actually, that you cannot, is one of the things you cannot delegate to AI. But in a world where everyone is automating everything, that felt almost contrarian, let's say. Where do you draw the line between leveraging AI and losing the skill?
I mean, yeah, so that post was specifically around, say we have a like quarterly review or a yearly review for a client, right? So we've done our strategy, we've been doing our reporting, things are kind of roughly heading in the right direction. And the goal of that analysis is to figure out what was working well, what wasn't working, what we could do more of, you know, why certain things happened. And normally when I go through that process, I just generate ideas, because you're exposed to those things and then you see, oh, a competitor's doing that, oh, they could do that because I know they've got this capability, or they mentioned this thing in a previous conversation. And there's dozens of links and bits of nuance and conversation and knowledge from 10 years ago that AI doesn't have, that means it can't make those connections and those decisions. And if you just say, you know, give me an analysis on this data and say what was working, and it just tells you, you're not in a position to interrogate that because you haven't done the work yourself. You know, to give you an example, which is the first example in my Sofia talk, so preview, in terms of analysis, because I've seen this a lot, people saying, oh, you can use AI for analysis. If you ask ChatGPT, if you ask Claude, if you ask Grok, I want to wash my car, the nearest car wash is 100 meters away. Should I walk there or should I drive there? All of them will tell you, oh, it's only 100 meters, you should walk there. Obviously without your car to be washed. I'd point out Gemini actually gets this correct. Gemini, the latest model, does say, well, no, you need your car with you. But my point is, it's such a basic piece of inferred logic from a couple of bits of data, you know, that a child would know this. So saying, yeah, we give the AI 50,000 lines of data and we give it GSC stuff and then we ask it to do analysis, it can't do that. With any kind of novel situation, it's infantile. So, and the other issue is the problems, the errors it creates generally are subtle and they're hard to pick up, especially if you're not familiar and you're not doing the analysis yourself. And then those problems cascade as well because you build untruths or more untruths. And some people say, yeah, well, of course there needs to be a human in the loop, you need to check it. I'm like, if you're going to check it, just do the work yourself, you know. Because you'll be positioned to be lazy and biased if AI has given you an answer that looks good. Most people, you know, naturally will do rudimentary checks around if that's true, whereas if you have to get there yourself, you learn a lot more.
I think maybe AI is just you know, fake it until you make it, because they are so sure about the answer. So just just go with it. And we were speaking about time, and your talk is locked in for March 25th. So how far in advance do you finalize your deck? You are giving us some preview, but you have everything ready for that?
I wish. So I currently have 0 slides done. I generally, my process is I have kind of a Google Doc where I just write ideas down. And I do a lot of thinking, like if I've got a talk coming up, like on my commute or something, just to develop these ideas, like kind of keep going over them in my head, because I feel that your job as a speaker is to do the work to deliver the points succinctly. So you're not waffling. You're thinking about what's the most important thing I'm trying to communicate here, and what is a entertaining or efficient way to get that across. And to me, that's the hard work. The kind of making the slides and stuff. Well, that's hard for me because I'm terrible at design, as you've seen with MS Paint. Yeah, so I'm still actually I've got 1 page of bullet points so far. So my plan is actually to work on it today, and then next week to recruit some design people maybe to help me do some slides. I've been thinking about illustrating it, doing it mainly in MS Paint, but we'll see how that goes.
I can tell you some AI tools that can help you with that. And let's talk a little bit about your work, because you build AlsoAsked around people also ask data, and this data has become one of the most valuable real estate pieces on the SERPs. So how has the way SEOs use that data evolved, and are people still underestimating what's in there?
Yeah, so the PAA data, in my opinion, is some of the most valuable keyword research data you can get. We've been using it for over a decade. I first demonstrated basically our internal command line version of AlsoAsked in 2016 because I just thought everyone was doing this. And then the whole reason we made AlsoAsked was I kind of got swarmed after the talk, and everyone was like, "Oh, can we have this tool?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I gave them the Python script, but then I was basically getting support emails on, "Oh, it says it doesn't work because of this," and I was like, "Okay, there's a demand here, and there's a barrier to entry." So the interesting thing for me about PAA data is, so I think it's still going to be around for a long while because Google uses it as like an induction loop to understand queries. So especially broader queries where it could mean one of several things, and they present you with the PAAs, it gives people a way to kind of hone down on what they're actually asking for. The cool thing about it is it updates faster than any other bit of keyword data I've seen. So if something big happens on the news, the PAA searches reflect the updated intent within hours sometimes, which is wild. The types of searches you see in there, the purpose I use them for is generally once I've decided what I'm going to write about, the PAA data decides what I should cover in that piece of content, whether it's a podcast, a video, written content, whatever. Because what it's essentially giving you is Google's proximity, kind of intent proximity. So they're saying if someone asks this question, these are the next most likely things they're going to ask. And because of how Google judges its own performance on time to result, and if people kind of jumping back to SERPs, it makes complete logical sense that you should be covering some of these in your answer. And actually, Chris Green just completed a study we published it a couple of weeks ago. He did it a couple of months ago for us. So he did this completely independently, and he was measuring the correlation between organic ranking and how many PAA questions were answered. And it wasn't a huge surprise to me, but it's good to have the data. There's a very strong correlation a lot of the time between how thoroughly you cover those questions and how well you rank. So we published that study on AlsoAsked. And again, he did that. We gave him some API credits, but we had no say in how he did the test and the outcome. If it was terrible, I probably just wouldn't have published it. But as it turned out, it was very good for me.
And how is different the data from PAA to query fan out? So
yeah. So query fan out, from what I've seen, so if we talk about Google, because it's probably the closest comparison, there is actually a Gemini grounding API. So you can send prompts to the Gemini grounding API. It will tell you if it's going to do grounding, and it will give you the fan out queries that it uses. So the difference is that if you put something into Google and you get PAA results, the data that you get back will be what are the closest questions to answering this topic. So it's kind of continuing down that same road. Query fan out tends to be, especially if you have more complex questions coming into the LLM, a series of searches with single intent that may be different. So it might be, I want some running shoes to do this, and I'm a unfit middle-aged man, and it will do a few different Google searches that are required to answer that query. So they're quite different. The keyword research process that we've built around AI will do the query fan out stuff first and collect all of those query fan outs, and then we run that against AlsoAsked. So for every query fan out, we get the PAA tree as well, and we tie all of those things together, and we actually can recursively go down then. So we can model what happens if this person asks this people also ask question into an LLM, and what query fan out does that generate, so we can chain it off that way. So that way you understand what the LLM is searching for, and you understand what should be included in the content to answer each fan out.
Okay. Whoa. That can be forever, like a long tail.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about SEO in general, because I'm curious about your actual process. For example, when a new client lands on your desk at Candour, what does the first month look like? Where do you start, and what do most agencies get wrong in that phase?
So generally, when we do a pitch for a client, we will explain our process rather necessarily than what the strategy is, because I don't think you can make a strategy until you've completed several other steps first. So if we onboarded a new client, we have a specific onboarding process with the whole team. So it's the strategists, the SEOs, the AMs, that goes into depth about, you know, how do you make money? Tell us about your brand. Tell us about your customers. How are you different from your competitors? Who are your competitors? All of these questions, if they have brand guidelines, what their mission values are, because everything you do for SEO needs to operate within those parameters in that context. Even things like their internal capabilities. So if they have an internal PR team, they don't necessarily need us to do that for them. So when it comes to working out what we need to do, we need to take that into account. So we'll have onboarding, and then depending on the client, there is usually some kind of auditing process, whether that's a performance audit or technical or content, depending on the kind of scope of what we're doing. Now, audits, in my opinion, shouldn't necessarily a lot of the time just be like a deliverable, an output. They should be an input into something else. So we do the audits, which informs us where we currently are. And then from speaking to the client, we know what their aspirations are, what their targets are, what their capabilities are. So then you have a good picture of, okay, you want to be here. You've got this much money, this much time, this team, these skills. You're currently here. And then our expertise is the best route to get from A to B, which is the strategy, in context to all of your kind of business brand, your operational stuff is this. And then that should fit within the obviously time budget. If it doesn't, then you can have the discussion around, okay, you're asking for too much, like this is unrealistic with your resources, which are important conversations to have early on, because it's not uncommon, you know, to sometimes have astronomical targets and then tiny budgets and no ability to execute. So that strategy, actually, we sometimes don't get there till maybe like 10 weeks in, because in my opinion, it's worth getting that sorted and correct in the beginning. And that's why we have good retention, because we're not 6 months down the line suddenly realizing or having those discussions with clients where, well, you're not doing the things we told you to do. And they're like, yeah, well, we can't. We've got a 4-month dev queue, you know, so we need to know those things. So then once we've got the strategy, that gets made into a roadmap, which is essentially who needs to do what and by when, and all that's validated at every stage. And then you can actually get on with doing the SEO. I've been at agencies before where, you know, we were delivering this is how we're going to run your SEO at proposal stage. And then you're running into problems with, you know, the digital PR team don't want you to actually kind of say that. Yeah, there's a big dev backlog. You can't get stuff done, or they can't produce content as fast, or there's regulatory concerns. So I think that's sometimes where agencies in the rush to deliver results, because there is always that pressure. And that's sometimes the pressure then we come under, which is, okay, well, when can we start? And it's like, trust me, it's better if we know exactly what we're doing before we just kind of dive in with both feet.
And is it easy to explain to the client that you need some time to analyze everything and to decide what to do, where to do it, and so on?
For most clients, I mean, this is essentially our pitch, and it's really this is how we do things. If you don't like it, that's fine. You'll have to find someone else though. There are cases, you know, where we've had specific targets within timeframes, and so we've given caveats of, okay, well, this seems like a fairly obvious thing to start with, so we can start with this while we do this other work. So it's not about being rigid, but if SEO is explained, as I said before, as a long-term thing, then, and if they've got the budget to do it properly, then that's the preferred route. It's not always possible to take the preferred route, as I'm sure anyone that's done like a site migration will know. But but yeah, you know, it's generally not too much of a problem unless there's kind of a resource issue.
And we have been talking a little bit about your talk in Sofia. And you've been running actually Search Norwich as a community meetup for years. Now you're scaling it up to SearchNorwichXL that lands in September as a full one-day conference. What made you decide this was the year to go big?
Well, the confession is we decided last year was the year to go big, but we sorted a venue out and then they kind of pulled the rug quite late. So we were just like, okay, we'll do it next year. So yeah, we ran Search Norwich as a meetup, which would be like 50 to 80 people every 2 months for quite a few years up until COVID. And then we had a kind of hiatus and brought it back for a few times after COVID.
Oh,
And
really? Did you stop? Why?
So I just nobody seemed keen on going to events after COVID for a while. So I was kind of like, let's cool down. But we ended up getting really, really good speakers and the event was really valuable. But to be frank, we had great sponsors. It was a lot of additional work on top of doing all the agency stuff to organize, catering, drinks, venue, speakers, accommodation, ticketing, all this stuff for, very little for us apart from kind of building the community.
It's branding, Mark. You don't understand. It's branding.
It was all under. That's the thing, though, as well. It was all under the Search Norwich branding, so we didn't promote Candour or anything like that when we did it. Because the initial goal was to help smaller companies locally who maybe couldn't afford like a proper agency to do SEO, so they could kind of learn a bit about it, so they didn't essentially get swindled by someone, promising to do all their meta descriptions or something. But yeah, the XL stuff was, I think we can deliver just more value. It will be less work for us, and we've got really nice venues here in Norwich. And there's actually no SEO conference in like all of this part of the country I live in all of East Anglia. It's basically the nearest stuff is usually London for us, which is a 2-hour train ride away, which is fine. But there's so many great agencies here as well. I'm kind of like, well, why aren't we doing something? So yeah, we've got really nice lineup we'll be announcing over the next few weeks, and a capacity for, touchwood, around 250 people.
Wow, good. Congrats. That's exciting, yeah. And you've been to SERP Conf before, and as someone who's now building your own conference, what stuck with you from that experience? What did you take away that's shaping how you're thinking about SearchNorwichXL?
Well, I really liked the violinist. So this sounds really weird, but if you weren't there, so yeah. At the beginning of the Vienna conference, it was just opened with a really amazing violin piece, and I was like, this is so cool. And it was a really nice way to kind of get the vibe going, because I think the first talks are sometimes the hardest when everyone's just sat down and you're kind of trying to get a feel for what it's like. But it was just very professionally run. In Vienna, there was a lot of room. The stages were, really, really good. It was just, and it's hard to put your finger on because I've talked about this a few times. It was one of the conferences that just had a very nice vibe. As a speaker, I was treated really well, and I thought, this is how I want to treat people that come and speak to me. They were really looking after us well, and the audience as well. Again, because of how the room was set up and stuff, I think was really engaged, because that's important, I think, for an event, and certainly as a speaker, to see that everyone can pay attention. And by that I mean things like, is the acoustics good? Is the seating making sense so everyone can see the stage? Because I've been to places where I've seen speakers in English and the acoustics are so bad and echoey in the room, I can barely understand what they're saying. So I'm like, for all of the non-native speakers in the room, it's like, you don't have a chance, because I'm really concentrating. So it's small things like that where I was like, the talks are really accessible. This is nice and easy. The vibe's good. That's all I want to kind of create for people that come to Search Norwich.
Okay, I will have to go there with a list and, okay, this is good. Okay, this is good. Okay.
Well, I'd love, you know me, I love feedback.
Okay. So let's go for the last part of the interview. It's a section I just call no crawl delay.
Nice.
It's short questions, quick answers, and no overthinking. So just say whatever comes to mind first. All right. If you had to explain your entire SEO philosophy in one single MS Paint drawing, what would you draw?
A happy user.
That's good. Okay, 1,500 unsolicited tips aren't counting. Has there ever been one where you posted and then internet, disagreed loudly, and you thought maybe I should have kept that one to myself?
So out of all of the ones people disagree with the most, I think it was when I published the data about how on average leaving meta descriptions blank was better than writing them because they get higher click-throughs. And there was like 3 studies proving this. And people hated it. It got like 1,000 comments of people justifying why they need to write meta descriptions. But I'd publish it again. Because it was data backed, it was it was watertight.
But you took the job of so many people and juniors doing meta descriptions, so that's why people were angry. Okay, if your current approach to SEO had just a theme song, something that plays every time you open Search Console, for example, what would it be?
So my favorite song at the moment is by a band called Vista Kicks, and it's called "Live You're Gonna Die." And I'd play that because I think you just need to take SEO with a pinch of salt and not too seriously. Search Console is always changing their data, so yeah, we're not out there saving lives. It's just clicks and marketing and stuff. So that would be my vibe. Yeah.
And the last one, if you could snap your fingers and fix one thing about how the SEO industry works, not Google, just the industry itself, what would it be?
So this is a real wish one because I don't think it's possible, which is, I think it would be good if there was some kind of universal standard or grading or something for SEO agencies and practitioners that demonstrated they knew what they were doing. I've seen people talk about it before. I don't think it's possible because of the nature of SEO and how it changes and the different approaches that are all valid. But I think it would save a lot of people a lot of distress and money, because it's a really common thing, as I'm sure anyone working in SEO knows, of inheriting clients that have been burnt by previous practitioners, and then you see what they were doing and you were just like, wow, this has been a colossal waste of money. So if I could click my fingers and solve that, it would probably be that would be a good one.
I like it because I have thought about that a few times too. Like, I don't know if in English, but the código deontológico, the deontologic code for the doctors and medicals and so on, that you have some rules you have to follow. And some job schools have this, like for lawyers and so on. So maybe we can just group and say like the 10 rules for all SEO professionals that must follow. Like, yes, some ethic there.
Good luck getting everyone to agree on those.
No, I wouldn't try. It was another wishful thinking. Yeah. So, Mark, thank you so much. It has been a brilliant conversation, from MS Paint philosophy to thinking like a robot, or not thinking like a robot. You've given us a masterclass in what it means to do SEO with clarity and conviction. And for everyone watching, if you want to see Mark break this down live, he'll be on a stage at the Expo Center in Sofia on March 25th with his talk, Do Not Think Like a Robot, SEO Decision Making for Humans. Don't miss him at SERP Sofia, and it will be a great talk. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thanks for having me, David. It's been fun.
Thank you. Bye.